The billionaire stopped dead when she opened the service room door and found her supposedly ordinary janitor sitting on the floor, feeding a little girl from a battered lunchbox. But the sight that truly shattered her assumptions was not the food. It was the way the little girl looked at her father with complete trust while he carefully wiped a crumb from her cheek and checked the medical bracelet around her wrist. The man wore a faded maintenance uniform, his hands were rough from years of physical work, and there was nothing about him that suggested wealth or importance. Yet when the billionaire's security chief later uncovered his past, she discovered that the quiet janitor had once been a Navy SEAL who had risked his life to save others and had walked away from that world for one reason: his little daughter. If you believe kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances can change a person's life, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share this story with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so our family can continue sharing stories that remind us that the greatest heroes are not always the people standing in the spotlight. Evelyn Harcourt had spent most of her adult life surrounded by people who wanted something from her. At 44, she was the founder and chief executive of a global technology company worth billions. Her name appeared on business covers, charity invitations, and investment reports. She owned several homes, traveled with security, and had assistants who could arrange almost anything before she finished asking for it. Yet despite all that power, Evelyn carried one private regret. She had become so focused on protecting her company and maintaining control that she had forgotten how to simply be present for the people around her. Her own father had taught her that success meant never showing weakness, so she had spent decades becoming exactly the kind of person who could never be caught unprepared. She had built an empire, but she had also built walls. Those walls began to crack when she noticed a janitor named Callum Reeves. Callum was 39 years old and worked in the lower levels of Evelyn's headquarters. He cleaned offices, repaired broken fixtures, carried supplies, and handled the endless small emergencies nobody else wanted to deal with. He was quiet without being unfriendly, serious without being cold, and almost never involved himself in office politics. Employees knew him as the man who always arrived early and never complained about difficult work. What they did not know was that Callum was a single father raising his 7-year-old daughter, Maisie. Maisie had a congenital heart condition that required regular medical monitoring and medication. She was cheerful despite her limitations, but certain days were difficult. Her energy disappeared quickly, and she sometimes needed to rest for hours after activities other children took for granted. Callum arranged his entire life around her needs. He refused jobs that required frequent travel, declined promotions that would keep him away from home, and chose the modest maintenance position because its schedule allowed him to take Maisie to appointments and be there when she needed him. He never told anyone that he had once been a Navy SEAL. For Callum, that part of his life belonged to another person he had been before becoming a father. His military years had taught him discipline, navigation, emergency medicine, tactical planning, and the ability to stay calm when everyone else was panicking. He had served in dangerous environments and had experienced losses that still surfaced in quiet moments. When his military career ended, he struggled with the transition to ordinary life. He no longer wanted medals, recognition, or responsibility for the lives of strangers. He wanted to raise Maisie. That was enough. One afternoon, Evelyn was walking through the lower floor after a meeting when she noticed Callum carrying a small lunch bag toward an unused service room. She had never seen him take a break there before. Curious, she followed at a distance and opened the door. What she saw stopped her cold. Maisie was sitting at a small table, her feet not quite reaching the floor. Callum was kneeling beside her, carefully cutting a sandwich into tiny pieces. He checked the contents of her lunch container, measured the amount of juice in her cup, and then gently reminded her to take her medicine. There was nothing dramatic about the scene. No grand sacrifice. No heroic music. Just a father making sure his little girl had eaten safely. Evelyn realized Maisie had been spending some afternoons at the building because Callum could not afford a private sitter and did not want to leave her alone. She immediately became concerned about company policy and security. But before she could speak, Maisie looked up at her father with a smile that revealed how completely safe she felt. Evelyn quietly closed the door. For the rest of the afternoon, she could not stop thinking about what she had seen. She had assumed Callum was simply a maintenance worker with an ordinary life. She had never wondered why he seemed so observant, why he noticed everything, or why he could move through crowded hallways without ever appearing startled. She had never noticed the way he instinctively positioned himself between Maisie and strangers, or how he always scanned a room before allowing his daughter to sit down. Then Evelyn's security chief mentioned something strange. Callum had noticed a damaged security camera before the company's own technicians did. That made Evelyn curious. She authorized a routine background review. The report arrived the following morning. Evelyn stared at the first page for nearly a minute. Callum Reeves had served in the United States Navy and had later become a Navy SEAL. His record included specialized training, overseas deployments, commendations, and service in operations that remained confidential. His military career had ended several years earlier. The report also revealed that he had lost members of his unit during an operation that had changed him permanently. Evelyn suddenly remembered the quiet man she had seen eating lunch with his daughter. He was not an ordinary janitor. But what surprised her even more was what had happened after his military service. Callum had been offered security positions that paid several times his current salary. He had turned them down because they involved extensive travel. He had also been offered consulting work that could have made him wealthy. He chose the maintenance job instead. Because Maisie needed him. Evelyn felt something uncomfortable inside her chest. She had spent years believing that money gave people freedom. Callum had willingly chosen less money because freedom, to him, meant being available when his daughter needed him. Still, Evelyn worried about Maisie's presence in the building. She asked Callum to meet her. Callum expected to be fired. Instead, Evelyn asked him why he had never told anyone about his military history. Callum explained that he did not want special treatment. He had spent enough years being judged by what he could do in dangerous situations. Now he wanted to be judged by whether he was a good father. That answer stayed with Evelyn. Then she asked about Maisie. Callum explained that her medical condition had become more difficult after his divorce. Her mother had moved to another state and had very limited involvement in her daily care. Callum had never spoken badly about her because he did not want Maisie to grow up carrying resentment. Evelyn admired that. But their biggest challenge came a few weeks later. The company hosted a daytime community event for employees and their families. The building was crowded with children, food stalls, music, and activities. Callum had brought Maisie because she wanted to see the children's science exhibition. At first, everything was fine. Then Maisie became pale. Callum noticed immediately. Her breathing had changed. He moved her to a quiet area and checked her condition. Evelyn, who happened to be nearby, saw the calm precision in his movements. He did not panic. He did not waste time. He knew exactly what to do. But Maisie's condition worsened. Evelyn called emergency medical services. Callum stayed beside his daughter, holding her hand while keeping her calm. Within minutes, medical personnel arrived. Maisie was taken for evaluation. Evelyn watched Callum's face as the medical team worked. For the first time, she saw the man beneath the calm exterior. He was terrified. Not for himself. For her. The former SEAL who had once faced dangerous missions without showing fear was now struggling to hold himself together because his little girl was sick. Evelyn sat beside him. She did not offer money. She did not offer business connections. She simply stayed. Maisie eventually stabilized. The doctors explained that her medication needed adjustment and that the episode had been frightening but manageable. Callum closed his eyes and exhaled slowly. Evelyn realized something important. Callum had saved lives in places where nobody knew his name. But nothing had ever frightened him like the possibility of losing his daughter. The experience changed Evelyn. She began looking differently at the people around her. She noticed employees eating lunch alone. She noticed parents struggling with childcare. She noticed workers taking extra shifts because their children needed medical care. She realized that many of the people she considered employees were carrying entire worlds outside the office. She decided to create a family support program within her company, including flexible schedules, emergency childcare assistance, and medical support for employees caring for sick children. Callum helped design the program. Not because he wanted recognition, but because he knew exactly what families like his needed. The program became one of the company's most successful initiatives. But Evelyn's relationship with Callum changed in a more personal way. She began spending time with Maisie. At first, Evelyn worried that the little girl would be intimidated by her. Instead, Maisie treated her like any other adult. She showed Evelyn her drawings. She asked Evelyn about the enormous glass offices upstairs. She even convinced Evelyn to help build a small model airplane with her and Callum. For Evelyn, the experience was strangely healing. She had never allowed herself to be silly. Maisie made that impossible. One afternoon, Maisie handed Evelyn a drawing. It showed 3 people standing beside a large tree. One was a little girl. One was a tall man. The third was a woman wearing a suit. Above them was a bright yellow sun. Evelyn looked at the drawing and felt tears rise in her eyes. She asked Maisie who the 3 people were. Maisie pointed to herself. Then Callum. Then Evelyn. Callum watched quietly. Evelyn understood what the drawing meant. Family did not always come from blood. Sometimes it came from people who chose to stay. Months passed. Callum eventually accepted a position overseeing emergency preparedness and family safety for Evelyn's foundation. He continued to remain involved in Maisie's care, but now he also used his military experience to help protect vulnerable communities. Evelyn never tried to turn him into a celebrity. She respected his wish for privacy. His SEAL past remained something they knew about but did not use for publicity. Maisie grew stronger. Her medical condition remained something she had to manage, but she became more confident about it. She started attending school regularly and eventually joined an art program. Callum encouraged her to dream without pretending that limitations did not exist. Evelyn learned the same lesson. She could not control everything. She could not guarantee that nothing bad would ever happen. But she could be there when something did. That became the greatest change in her life. She stopped trying to buy safety. She started building trust. Years later, Evelyn stood in front of a group of employees at the opening of a new family center funded by her foundation. Callum stood nearby with Maisie, who had grown into a confident teenager. Evelyn looked at the crowd and thought about the day she had opened that service room door. She had expected to find a janitor taking an unauthorized break. Instead, she had found a father feeding his child. And behind that ordinary scene was a story of sacrifice, courage, grief, and love. Callum's military past had impressed Evelyn, but it was not what changed her. His fatherhood did. His willingness to choose his daughter's needs over money did. His humility did. The medals and missions were part of his history, but the man who patiently cut a sandwich into small pieces for his daughter was the man Evelyn respected most. Before we reach the ending, leave a meaningful comment and tell us what touched you most about this story. Was it Callum's sacrifice, Maisie's courage, or Evelyn's realization that true wealth is measured by the people we care for rather than the things we own? Your comment might remind someone today that they are not alone in the struggles they carry. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Because Evelyn had once believed that heroes were people who stood on stages and received awards. Then she opened a service room door. She saw a father feeding his little girl. And she discovered that the quiet man wearing a janitor's uniform had once been a Navy SEAL, but his greatest act of courage was not something recorded in a military file. It was choosing his daughter every single day. Choosing her over money. Choosing her over status. Choosing her over opportunities that would have taken him away. And when Evelyn finally understood that, she realized the richest person in the building had never been her. It was the father who had almost nothing but gave his daughter everything that mattered. Because sometimes heroism is not about running toward danger. Sometimes it is simply sitting beside the person you love, making sure they have eaten, holding their hand when they are afraid, and quietly promising through every ordinary day that you will still be there tomorrow.